Hi. So, have you recently gotten really sick or have been sick or had a doctor tell you that you only have so much time to live? I want to tell you something, a story that I hope encourages your faith and gives you the courage and strength that you need from God, right? So, my great grandmother uh, turned was 19 years old, and she got headaches, like really bad headaches, enough to where she went to a doctor. The doctor told her that she had a tumor and told her that for them to remove it, there would be a 95% chance of her dying, because back then they didn't really have the technology they have today, right? So they told her, if you want to just stick with it, you're only going to live for so many months. Now, of course, this is devastating because she wanted to have kids and grandkids, right? So, uh, long story short, my great grandmother was a praying great grandmother. She had faith in God. She knew, like I know, that we are healed by His stripes. And she continued to pray, and she would have the headaches and the migraines. And again, they only gave her a couple months to live, right? So she ended up getting married, having kids, which was something that she wanted, was to have kids. Then years later, she was again still alive. This is many years later. Her kids got married and they had kids, so she got to meet her grandkids. Right, still alive, by the way. And then years and years and years after this, then her grandkids got married and had kids, to where she had even great grandkids and was still alive, right? And this is really fascinating, right? Again, still praying and still having faith, right? And um, you know, she wanted to meet her kids, her grandkids, and her great grandkids. Now, by the time her great grandkids were born, even if she lived for another 300 years, it wouldn't have made a difference, because when that last great grandkid was born, there wasn't going to be any more great grandkids. In other words, that was like the end of the line, right? And me, I'm actually her very last great great grandkid, and I met her when I was a newborn baby, right? And it's fascinating, because God is a healer. He really is, and I hope somehow this is encouraging to you, because my great grandmother's God is your God, right? Okay, it's the same God. She prayed to the same God that you were praying to, or start praying to, okay? Because God can do anything. There's no limitations to what God can do, and um, it's interesting to think that she met her very last great grandkid she would ever have. Like I said, even if she lived another 300 years, I was the last one, and and I can speak for her by saying that she did have faith that whole time. She didn't give up. She was like Job. She didn't, curse God and die. She didn't do that. She stayed in faith the whole time, and God gave her a very long life. She didn't die 2 months after turning 19. No, she died in her 70s. So she lived a very long life. And I hope that somehow this does speak to you, because I'm sure you've probably heard the saying, you don't go by what the doctors say. It's not about the doctor's report, but it's true. You don't go by the doctor's report. It isn't what the doctors say. In the end, God says what's going to happen. God will say if you're going to live 5 minutes or 500 years. God is able to do whatever He wants. He's the great physician, the real physician. Go by what God says, not by what man says, because my great grandmother is not the only story. There are stories everywhere of the same thing about people having faith, because the doctors don't really know. They're not God. They can come up with these little theories, but they're not God. They don't decide. There's people that are like 5 years old and they die, okay? They get sick. But then there's people that get sick and they're 90 years old and they die. Because ultimately, man doesn't decide when man dies. God decides, right? And I hope this is really encouraging, and um, if you don't have any problems, but you know somebody, please show them this video or talk to them about this testimony, because this is an amazing testimony, because it's the truth. It shows proof that God is in charge. God decides, not man. And it's interesting, because my great grandmother, she did this drawing of a rabbit, right? And she gave it to my grandmother. My grandmother gave it to my mother, and my mom gave it to me, and it's literally the only thing in existence that came from my great grandmother. And I figured I would show it just for a second. I have to be careful because it's like 50 years old, well, 50 plus years old, and it's just like a rabbit she drew. But the reason why I'm showing you this is it's a reminder. I can look at that thing, if there's like times when my faith is having issues and things are going on in my life, I can look at that drawing and it reminds me of my grandmother's faith, well, great grandmother's faith, that she could be told that she's going to die in 2 months at age 19 and makes it to 70. That if you have faith in God, God can do anything. Man doesn't decide your fate. Remember that. God decides your fate. And I hope that this speaks to you, and I hope this increases your faith, and I hope that you keep pushing forward because, again, the doctor's not in charge. God is in charge. God decides. And I hope somehow this helps you. Thank you, and have a nice day.